So today we are talking macros. What are macros and why do you need them? What do you use them for? How do they help? How do they not help? We're going to cover that here today. The first thing we're going to do is kind of cover what macros actually are, where you can find them. So we're going to click on our little question mark down here and we're going to go to macros. That's easy enough, right? I do have some system macros in here. We are not going to cover that today. We're just going to do some very common ones. So first off here, let's delete this and just recreate this. I'm going to create a brand new macro. We are going to call it I Hate Gnomes. Right? That's a good macro. So we'll go I Hate Gnomes. And then in here, we're going to do a couple of commands. So first we're going to do like a say command. It's going to be like I hate gnomes. Then we'll do like an emote. So we'll choose something rude, like a rasp. All right, and we'll save that. So we'll take this macro that we just created, and now if I click on the target, it's like I hate gnomes. Let's see if we can find a gnome. You know what? There are no gnomes in Ardenweald, so that's fine. We'll just use the target enemy. Boom. I hate gnomes. And a rude little noise. Cool. So that's generally what the macro is. Next, let's just kind of go over different types of macros, how to create them, and then how to use them. One of the more useful macros that I could think of that like everybody needs is the Healthstone macro or potion macro. You could call it whatever you wish. Here's essentially what it does. It's going to use my Healthstone first. If I don't have a Healthstone, it'll do this Rejuvenating Siphoned essence. That's a Torghast potion. Or the standard spiritual healing potion that we have here in Shadowlands. The good thing about this is you set it up and you change it rarely. So this is always a good one to have. Alright, next on our list, we're going to have a standard Mouseover Macro. In order to show you the Mouseover Macros, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a healing spec, because healing specs are the specs that will use this the most. This is actually the most useful of macros. The very first macro I used was a Mouseover Macro for healing. The simplest form of a Mouseover Macro is you just use the cast, and then you'll use the Mouseover command and whatever spell you're wanting to cast. So in this case, it's going to be Cenarion Ward. We had to find a friendly character for the Mouseover to work. So like if I mouse over this character, we can just go ahead and click that button and it'll cast our healing spell onto them. If we target something, of course it'll cast it on them, but we can also like hover over a unit frame, and it could be a player unit frame, like if you're in a party, or that's most of the ways you will use this, especially if you're in a party. If we mouse over his frame, it'll do the same thing. So frames or the characters, you can use both of those in order to use your Mouseover macros. Now that we understand what Mouseovers are, we're going to go over a very useful Mouseover combo that healers can use. It's called the help harm. For instance, if you look down at my bars here, if I target a friendly character, I have healing spells. If I target someone that's not friendly, it will give me damage spells. So I can keep casting on this guy all day long. No worries, right? Easy breezy. Let's see if we have a friendly character over here. I can go ahead and cast spells on this character right over here, just by mousing over him. If I mouse over this one, I could damage again. Also very easy. You can also hit him with a shield. Let's do that. It just works out to whatever you want to mouse over. It'll choose harm or help, just like my description says.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger!
Now we're going to talk cursor macros, and this will work for healers and for DPS. If you have anything that creates a targeting reticle, you can use this in order to just skip a step, essentially. What this cursor macro does is wherever your cursor's at, it skips the targeting step and it just places that item right there. So in my case, as a druid, I have this effervescence spell. So I can use this @cursor command when I do the cast, and it will just cast it directly on that spot. There you go. If I want to move it over to here, I just move my mouse, and it always puts it wherever my cursor is at. If I want it under my feet, that easy right there. That's a very simple way of how you can use the @cursor macro to skip the actual targeting step inside of a targeting reticle spell. Here is a special one. This one is near and dear to my heart here recently. This is a new one for me. I have not used this macro yet. We do have to switch specs, so let's do that. We're going to go back to our balance grid. Now, in last expansion, I had a Mass Root spell and a Typhoon spell. They were in the talent tree inside here. But they've taken away Typhoon from the talent tree and made it baseline for all druids. In the last expansion, I would use Mass Roots and I'd put it to the Q key. If I chose Typhoon, I would put it to the Q key. Well, now that I have both spells, I kind of ran into an issue. What I did is I created a Modifier Macro for this. This is the only one I use it for. It's just because I have my muscle memory. I hit the Q key for Mass Roots. I hit the Q key for Typhoon. With this Modifier Macro, let me pull it up for us here so we can take a look at that. I can keep both keys bound to the Q key if I use a modifier so that it casts the different spell. So without the modifier, I just cast Roots. But if I hit my control key, now I can hit Typhoon as well when I hit the Q key. It's really that simple. That's all it is. If I hit Q key, it does Mass Roots. If I switch to control, it will do Typhoon. This is another new one that I love. It's a focus macro. I have just recently set up this focus macro. I never needed it before. As a druid, I can interrupt things, but let's be honest, that's a melee problem. Okay, so we can interrupt things every once in a while in an emergency, but it's not really our job. The problem that we had in my particular raid group is Frida. If you've ever done the Council of Blood, we ourselves save her till last, so we have a lot of interrupts that we have to do on her. Because if she gets that cast out, it wipes the raid. So we just created this very simple macro so we could focus a target. We'll focus this one. We will set focus. And all this does is it will cast Solar Beam on my focus target. If I don't have a focus target, it works just like normal, so I don't have to worry about it. But in this case, since I do have a focus target, so I'm just attacking this boss here. I'm not doing anything special, I'm just DPSing. And let's say all of a sudden, that target over there starts casting a spell that I want to interrupt. All I have to do is, since I have it on focus, I just hit my interrupt, and it will automatically interrupt my focus target. It's so handy. It is so handy. I've loved it since I've gotten it, because there are certain things in dungeons where I could just, quickly focus that target, and then I just wait for my little wigs to make a little noise in my ear, and I just to interrupt, I could keep DPSing the target that I'm wanting to. That just about does it for macros. It's a short and sweet video, just kind of a really quick rundown. There's so much work you can do with macros, but again, I'm trying to make this simple and easy and something that beginners could start dipping their toes into. The main thing I would suggest is having a Healthstone macro set up, and if you're a healer, you do have to have Mouseover Macros. You could just set up a simple Mouseovers for all of your healing spells. Those help harm macros are just so handy. I highly suggest using those, but if it's too confusing, just simple Mouseovers for all of your healing spells will be just fine. Let's go ahead and, test. Let's see, do we have any gnomes? No gnomes. No gnomes in Ardenweald. How sad. God, I hate gnomes. You will never see me playing a gnome. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it is informative, I hope it helps you, and I hope you understand why you would want macros and the benefits of setting those up ahead of time, so when you get into certain situations, it just makes life easier. It's also important to understand what they are, because when you start getting up into like higher level dungeons or decide to start raiding, sometimes the group will say, hey, let's make a macro. And it's really nice if you even understand where the screen is, and when they paste their macro in, what little tweaks you have to make. Like, oh, I have to change my spell name into this slot, or I have to change my tooltip name into the spot, something like that. That does it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Just a quick little update. I am streaming back on Twitch instead of here on YouTube. There were just certain logistical challenges with streaming on YouTube. I couldn't stream in the morning and then post at night. It just messed things up as far as notifications going out. So we're just going to keep everything separate. Our videos are going to be here on YouTube. We have our short form content on the Twitters. And then we're going to do all of our streaming on Twitch. It makes everything easier for me to analyze in the end. Until next time, make sure you turn on war mode.